If you could give everyone in the world an experiment to do for 30 days, one activity that they'd have to do every day for 30 days, what would it be?
I would ask them to take out a piece of paper and write down every thought that they've been thinking that's standing in the way between their future and where they are. To write down every habit or behavior, even how they speak, that stops them from becoming the person that is healthy, wealthy, or free. And then to begin to recognize the emotions that keep them in the same state of being every single day, and become so conscious of those thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that they wouldn't let any of them slip by unnoticed by them. Then I would have them write down the thoughts they do want to fire and wire in their brain. I would have them write down what the behaviors look like of a great person that they wanted to become. And I would have them practice thinking about it and practice rehearsing it. And then I would say to them, what emotions would you feel when your future happened? Because you have to teach your body emotionally what that future feels like before it happens. And every day, if you practice that diligently and sincerely, and just become conscious of who you no longer want to be, and keep becoming conscious of who you do want to be, you should begin to see evidence in your life. And when it comes in a way that you least expect, that surprises you and leaves no doubt that it's come from a greater mind, then you'll be inspired to do it again. And now we believe we're more the creators of our lives and less of the victims of our lives.
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men all my life. Like na 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 na. For my top 10, top 10, na 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 na. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and my take on his top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, have elevated emotions.
If you said, well, listen, I'm not going to wait for my healing to feel gratitude. I'm not going to wait for my new relationship to feel love. I'm going to actually teach my body emotionally what that future feels like before it happens. Now, this is a big turnaround for a lot of people because we're so reliant on the outer world to change our inner world, right?
And waiting and postponing.
And waiting is not creating. I mean, period. And when people they could have the greatest intentions in the world, but if they don't combine that with an elevated emotion, there's no signal, because the elevated emotion is the carrier. It's the energy that carries the thought. So then when we're in separation, in lack, waiting for our wealth to feel abundance, we're basically living our whole life in pain, right? So then if you reason this, and a person can get up from their meditation and they literally feel differently, and they're feeling the emotions of their future before it happens, this is turning the whole process around. They can't be looking for it. Why would they be looking for it if they felt like it already happened? Now there's no separation. Now this is when those serendipities and coincidences and opportunities begin to show up in people's lives. So it's work, but then when they start seeing the experience in their life, all of a sudden they start believing they're more of the creator of their life and less of the victim of their life.
Rule number 3, change the pattern.
With a community of like-minded, similar energy of people, everybody understands, they get one another. You know, communities tends to be the thing now that, in terms of our social media and the feedback we're getting, everybody wants more community, because you get 1,000 people in an audience and their energy's synchronized. Now you're looking at something so much bigger. We're just going to measure this. I just talked to a researcher yesterday. We're going to measure 1,000 people when they reach that synchronized moment, when we know that the entire social coherence in the room is orderly. Then if you're producing an ambient, coherent magnetic field in your heart, and you're tuning into a thought or an intent, and you got 1,000 people doing that, and your energy is going to start interfering and commingling with the person who's next to you. When that energy starts to synchronize, it's going to produce a bigger wave. The higher the amplitude, the higher the wave, the more energy there is. So now you have one mind and one heart. And now when it comes to healing others, and we've done the research on this now, and we're collecting the data, that we're teaching people how to administer a change in energy in the person that's laying there. Because it's not matter that emits a field. That's the wrong way to think about it. It's the field that creates matter. You change the field, you change matter. It's not your job to change the tumor. The tumor is the illusion. It's the pattern in the field that has to be changed. So once people start reversing this, then you start seeing tumors disappearing. You start seeing blind people seeing, deaf people hearing. You start seeing people with Parkinson's disease switch on. I mean, you start seeing stage 4 cancer is reversing because now you're swimming upstream. You're going to the headwaters and making that change.
Rule number 4, lead with your heart.
It's so important then that of the infinite places you can put your attention, let's put it on your heart. Now, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Why? Because we want this center to bloom. 1,400, 1,300 different chemicals that restore and regenerate the body. Let's breathe. Let's open this up. Let's practice this. Let's start learning how to lead with our heart, a different consciousness. Yeah, in the beginning, it's a little difficult, but you stay with it and you practice it, pedal by pedal by pedal. You're placing your attention there. You're putting your own life force back into your heart. You're turning your love inward, and the body will start responding. And in a week's time, if we're doing that 3 times a day or over and over again, sooner or later, that thing's going to start blooming. And just like when your sexual organs are aroused and they're engorged with blood, this center, when you start feeling love, you make a chemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals a chemical called derived endothelial relaxing factor. You know what that is? It causes the arteries in your heart to literally open up. So your heart is going to be filled with blood and oxygen and nutrients. It's physiological. It's going to feel full. You're going to have a heart on, in a sense. Your heart is going to fill, right? And when that happens, you experience a level of love that passes all understanding. Your cup runneth over. I mean, it is, and people they're sobbing because they realize that this center finally, like a child.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, change your energy.
I think we're all faced with great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And in order, like for me personally, and after looking through your book and reading a good portion of it, I mean, for me, there's no school of ancient wisdom that you need to go to be initiated. Your life is your initiation if you're paying attention. So we meet challenges in our life from a certain level of mind, right? A certain level of consciousness or unconsciousness. And even Einstein said we have to go to a greater level of consciousness than the consciousness that's created the problem. Well, what is consciousness? Consciousness is awareness. And awareness means possibilities that you haven't thought of before. So we confront problems or challenges in our life. And as a side note, I was having breakfast with a researcher just last week who's studying what happens when we perceive a condition in our environment as a problem, how it weakens the organism. They're measuring this. And when a person sees it as a challenge, how they draw energy, they raise the energy of their body back into order. So if we said, I want to be wealthy or I want to be healthy, well, what you want to be that because you're not it. So the initiation of going from not it here to it here, you're going to have to climb some steps. And there's going to be some blind spots. So you try it out and it doesn't work. Well, that's because there's a part of you that's still in a habit. There's part of you that's still unconscious. Okay, so what is it about myself in that circumstance that I am feeling about that circumstance, and that feeling is causing me to think about it? So you say, oh, it's impossible, they'll never change. I'll hire a hitman, I'll hire the mafia, I'll hire an attorney, I'll have my friend's friend to talk to him, and nothing changes, right? Well, you're not separate from that experience. You're involved in it, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts energy into the field. So your energy is the same every day, and as long as your energy is the same, nothing's going to change in your life either. And nobody changes until they change their energy. So then, what piece of knowledge, what piece of information, what would love do? What would greatness look like? Okay, I don't know. All right, well, certainly somebody in history has faced this problem. Don't get on Facebook and say, does anybody have any answers? Go look it up and study and read and learn. You'll own it. And you'll say, wow, that person that was wealthy, they failed 500 times.
Yeah.
Well, hell, I had the wrong view of wealth. Okay, then failure's not a thing. I got to overcome failure. Well, yeah. Just climb the step.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm reacting to that circumstance with the same emotion. That emotion is firing the same thoughts. I'm broadcasting the same energy into the field. If I were facing that circumstance and situation again with that person, that circumstance, what do I learn from that circumstance? How could I do it differently the next time? Find out a solution and rehearse it. Install the circuitry so when you get in the circumstance, you're not going to respond in an automatic habituation.
Yeah.
Now you're at a greater level of consciousness. Now you're looking at possibilities that you weren't looking at before because you were unconscious. Now, that process of trial and error is so important in the spiritual path. How many times do we have to forget before we remember?
Oh, God.
And then we remember and we forget again. And it takes constantly remembering until we stop forgetting. And when we get to that point, now we're conscious. Now there's wisdom. And wisdom is the memory of the experience without the emotional charge. Now you're ready for the new adventure. So then people draw conclusions and say, oh, it's that person that ripped me off. It's that person that what? Now you don't create your reality? Oh, you only create your reality when things are good. Now, well, somehow you got to tango through this. Somehow your objectivity in not reacting emotionally is going to change the energy of how you address this situation.
Rule number 6, become conscious.
Consciousness is awareness. Awareness is paying attention and noticing. And so 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of unconscious automatic programs that we've just practiced so many times that we're not consciously thinking about those. So in order for you to change, to answer the initial question that you asked, the first step is you got to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. And you got to start looking at those hardwired thoughts that you think every day that are just circuits that have been fired and wired together.
How do we do that? Should we write a list at the end of the day, or what are the most common thoughts we had that day? Like, how does someone become aware of
You don't have
thoughts?
to do that. You just have to sit down, close your eyes, and not move. And then you'll start seeing.
What am I thinking about right now?
Yeah, and all you want to do is observe the thought, because when you begin to observe that thought, you're no longer the program now. You're the consciousness observing the program, and you're starting to pull out of the program.
Thinking about the thinking.
Yeah, who's doing the thinking of the thinking about the thinking? That's who you are when you're not the program. That's awareness, right?
Yeah.
You got to become aware of how you speak, how you act, become so conscious, so aware of it that you won't go unconscious and let that thought or that behavior run you. You got to say, oh my God, this feeling that I've been living by for the last 20 years is actually guilt. I didn't know it was guilt because it just feels like me. And all of a sudden, as you start becoming conscious of it, you're beginning to objectify your subjective self. You're pulling out of those programs, and nobody likes to do that because it's uncomfortable. They'd rather turn on their cell phone, start texting, get on the internet, watch TV to distract them from that moment. And that is what they have to move through in order to get to their own personal freedom. So the first step is becoming conscious. And meditation means to become familiar with, to become conscious of, to become so conscious of your unconscious self that you won't go unconscious to any thought, any behavior or emotion. And get ready, because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to do that, and awareness to stay conscious. And so we fall from grace.
Yeah.
Fine, you're awake, you got another day, let's go again.
How often do you fall?
Oh my gosh, I mean, how many times have I done it? Thousands, but I'm not gonna give up, because the moments in which I do connect, or the moments that I do have that transcendental experience, what matters the most after it, when I have that transcendental moment, I look back at all of those difficult meditations, those difficult days, and those are the ones you remember. You don't remember the good meditations. You remember the ones where you came up against yourself and you went a little further, and you said, I'm gonna go a little further, I'm gonna go a little further. Or you had a rough day and you just went in and you at the end of the day, you surrender and you have the classic, oh my God moment. There's no linear correlation. It's just whether you're willing to live in creation instead of living in survival. And so you get better at it. We just get better at it. And for me, staying conscious and staying aware and staying present is an art, because you know when someone's present with you in your life because they're paying attention to you. You know when they're not present with you because they're not paying attention to you. So imagine this field of information, this intelligence that lives within you and I, that's governing everything material in this world. It's a self-organizing intelligence. You have access to it, so you better get present with it as well as you can get present with anything else. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Right. That realm you can't experience with your senses. You can only experience with your awareness. So then people have to take their attention off their bodies and go from a somebody to a nobody. Take their attention off the people in their life and go from that they identify with, and go from a someone to a no one. Take their attention off the things in their life, their cell phone, their computer, their car, and go from something to nothing. Take their attention off where they sleep, where they work, where they're sitting, and go from somewhere to nowhere. Take their attention off the predictable future and the familiar past and time, and go from sometime to no time. And now if you're taking all of your attention off of everything material in this three-dimensional reality, now there's only one other thing that's left. That means you're in awareness, your consciousness. And now that is the bridge, that is the door to the quantum field, and you can't enter the quantum field as a somebody. So if someone has spent their whole life working on having the perfect body, or so much so they have so much attention on their pain, where you place your attention is where you place your energy, it's going to take some work for them to take all of their attention off their body, right? Because they'll do it and then they'll go back, let's see if the pain's still there. Oh, the pain's still there. So it's a little bit of a waltz in the beginning, but as people start applying this, you start getting better at it.
Rule number 7, invest in yourself.
Let's demystify meditation, because it has so many stigmas around it. Close your eyes, retreat from your life, disconnect from your body, disconnect from your environment, disconnect from your schedule, and just give yourself an hour or 45 minutes or 20 minutes. Because when you invest in yourself, you invest in your future. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in possibilities. And when you believe in possibilities, you believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in possibilities, then you don't believe in yourself. And you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe in possibilities. So but if you have a community, a living organism, where it's becoming the new normal, and you want to join that living organism, and you want to be a part of that, and every stride you make feeds the living organism. Every stride, every effort you make to connect is amazing, because that which we are seeking is seeking us. It's not like it matches our efforts. And so then when people have that uncompromising will, the same way that they go shopping for a dress or a pair of earrings or go to the gym and work out, with the same intensity, with the same passion, come up against themselves and just say, when the body's given everything it has, it's when you say, that's all you got? That's it? That's all you're going to put out? I'm ready. And so then when you start overcoming that, the side effect of it is that all of a sudden you're happy for no reason. And you're less seduced in believing that you need something outside of you to make you feel better. All of a sudden, you're feeling better every day without anything outside of you. And now all of a sudden, you start showing up unpredictable in your life. They're saying, that Ed guy, he's different.
He's
He's on a different medication. Something's going on with it. But in actuality, you're just freer, right?
Oh
and
my
so then as we begin to remove these layers that stop the flow of the divine in us, that in essence in us, the side effect is we become more willful, we become more mindful, we become more conscious, we become more loving. It's its nature, you know.
Yes.
It just becomes who we are.
Rule number 8, break the chains.
At the end of the day, if you really wanted to be wealthy, say, how did I do today? Did I make the right choices? Was I ethical? Was I purpose-driven? Am I interested in making a difference? Was I fair? Was I tempered? Did I really think before I spoke? What did I remember reading about that book, about that person that did it? How did I do? And if you said, when did I fall from grace? When did I lose it? Okay, I want that opportunity again. I want another shot at that. And I'm going in this way. What would love do in this situation? What would greatness do? And now you evolve your experience, and somehow there's a door, there's an opening, something shifts, something changes. And now here we go, we climb another ladder. And then all of a sudden there's another challenge. And then people who finally arrive at their abundance, they could care less if they're abundant. They're already knowing that they've earned the right for it. So there's sometimes a shortcut in the process if we really learn and we really get it. But the trial and error is so important because not only is the person earning the right to be wealthy, but they're earning the right to live in worthiness, worthy to receive. Like, hey, people come to our work all the time for a lot of reasons, and one of the common reasons is they want to get healthy. Yeah, and because they're dealing with a very serious health condition. And I always say the same thing to them: stop wanting to be healthy. Learn the formula on how to get healthy. Learn the formula on how to heal, and the healing will be the side effect of it. If you're obsessing about why am I not healed, you're still the old person. You're going to become that person every day, right? Turns out that when you sit down and the people that we interview that have had significant changes, when it's no longer about their health, but they are out of the bleachers and they're on the playing field, and they are coming up against the belief. Like one lady said, God, I always thought that this work really worked, that these concepts are the truth, but I never believed it worked for me. And I was in a car accident, I'm in a wheelchair. And then she made the decision that she was going to overcome that belief. Now, it was no longer about her healing. It was about overcoming the belief. When she overcame the belief, and it showed up every day for herself. When you believe in yourself, you believe in possibilities. When you believe in possibilities, you got to believe in yourself. You don't show up for yourself. You don't believe in it. And that's why people don't do the work. I mean, if you believe that your thoughts created reality, you would show up every day and create. And so a lot of people believe in their past more than they believe in their future. A lot of people fall in love or more in love with their past, or romance their past instead of romance their future or love their future. It's that simple. So the initiation process of life is always going to be there. You're always going to be challenged. If you want to be a master, well, then you better learn how to heal someone else. And you're going to fail a lot of times. And if you think that you're a failure, then you'll quit. But if you feel like you just didn't quite ding it yet, and you show up again to just ding it, and you keep evolving your experience and go deeper, how much more can I open my heart? How much more can I surrender into this infinite field? How much more can I become? Can I walk as it with my eyes open? People do meditations, and they have great meditations, me included. And then you get up, you open your eyes, and you're back in the program. And people want to know why they haven't healed. And we have testimonies of people, they're speaking the truth. They said, my MS, my rheumatoid, and my lupus never went away. And I had great meditations. I felt better. And then I realized with my eyes open, I was still that person. And now, next level. They're in the game, they're catching themselves, they're catching how they speak, they're watching how they think. They're not letting their body fall in the same emotional state to put them in the same past experience that the body's believing in. Now, this is the great part. And when a person finally breaks through from the chains, and there's a different consciousness, a freedom that happens, they look back at their past. They want to change one thing in their past because it brought them to that present moment. That's the past no longer existing. That's the freedom. So is it worth the effort? Yeah, it's no longer about healing. It's no longer about abundance. It's about who you're becoming.
Rule number 9, work on yourself.
I will never work in a relationship. I just won't. If I'm working in a relationship, something's wrong. I'll work on me, and I'll bring my best, you bring your best, and we get together, and we celebrate.
And it should work.
It should work. And if it doesn't, then I'm gonna step back and see, what is it about me? Not you, what is it about me that I need to really look at and change? Now, if there's a vibrational match, and it flows, and it's fun, and you connect on physically, mentally, mind, body, soul, that's cool. I think that's healthy. But a mission-driven person can't be in a relationship where you have to keep going back and trying to fix something. I just won't do that. I just think that when it's right, and I'll know. Yeah. So I do think that relationships can be easy, and I do think, and I think that they should be. And I think that if you're heart-centered, that's a different place you meet than other emotions. And again, every time I have a mystical moment, and I feel that transcendental love that I don't even know the word for, every time I have one of those moments, I think I got this all wrong. It's just that it is not chemical; it's electric. And
you got what all wrong?
Well, the way we view the world, the way we don't see things how they are, we see things how we are, and every inner experience that's transcendental, experience enriches circuitry in your brain. Experience produces emotion or energy in the body. So you start having transcendental moments where you start connecting to that field. Its signature is love. But not love like a love for your puppy. This is like an arousal. This is, I don't know the other word, but bliss.
Spiritual arousal.
And we have the evidence. We can say, oh, watch this person's brain. And scientists are studying our work. I'll say, oh, watch, she's going to pop in a few minutes. What do you mean? Just watch, she's going to pop. And all of a sudden, this person goes into an arousal. The sympathetic nervous system is so switched on, but the arousal isn't like an arousal that from the environment that produces anger or aggression or fear, or anxiety or pain or suffering. That's survival in the environment that produces the arousal. This arousal is coming from energy in the body that's moving up into the brain, and the arousal is bliss. The arousal is ecstasy. The arousal is
freedom, peace.
But it's not chemical. It's you'll feel it in every single cell in your body. Now, here's the outcome of that. The outcome of that is that when you open your eyes and some conditioning, some layer has been removed, your spectrum of the way the world looks broadens now, because now you're wired to perceive what's always existed, but you didn't have the circuits in place to perceive them. So then it's the inner experience that literally transforms our experience of the outer world. And so when you start having moments where you hit that kind of frequency, or you have those moments of love, you're less dependent on anyone to bring you happiness. You're okay. You can love the person for their flaws, because you can see a part of yourself you used to be that you no longer are. And instead of judgment, you have compassion. And you can encourage and communicate from a level of connection instead of intimidation or competition, or however relationships work.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is have fun.
What are the 3 things we should say when we wake up in the morning or think?
Well, first, I would say, what is the greatest ideal of myself that I can be today? And I would not get up until I felt like that person. The second thing I would say is, can I begin to keep my energy up the entire day? And if I do it properly, then I will be open to opportunities and possibilities that weren't there before. The last thing I would say is, could I sustain brain and heart coherence to the point where that intelligence within me that's giving me life begins to find a door to open out so I can begin to see evidence in my world?
What would you say every evening before you go to sleep?
Oh yeah, how did I do today? How did I do?
How did I do?
How did I do today? I mean, one day, one lifetime.
Yeah.
How did I do today? Yeah. Did I change or help another human being? Did I really change someone's future timeline? Lastly, what is the greatest thing I learned?
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're gonna enjoy, but before that, it's time for the question of the day. I wanna know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? When you watch a video and just get motivated, the science says you have a 35% chance of actually following through on your goals. That's not good enough. No, not for you, Believe Nation. We gotta do something. But when you write it down and you create a specific plan of action for the next week, that number jumps to 91% chance of you following through. And when you commit to somebody else, like leaving a comment on this video, it jumps to 95%. You need to follow through on your goals. So what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your specific plan of action for the next week? Put it down in the comments below so I can celebrate you.
I have 3 kids, and I've raised my kids with these principles. And I think there are critical periods, Ed, where certain information is more understood, and certain periods where you can really advance a teaching or an understanding. But children, you know, their first 6 years of their life, they're very suggestible to information, and their brainwaves are just in a slower pattern, so they don't have any critical facilities or analytical facilities. So big boys don't cry. Little girls should be seen and not heard. Money is the root of all evil. God is mad at you. You're going to go to hell. So kids just take that all in without any filter, and that becomes the foundation of their personality and their identity. Then you throw in parents. They're 95% of the time running unconscious programs. Well, children have mirror neurons, and mirror neurons emulate behavior. So when you were feeding your kids when they were young, you took that spoon and you went like this. You didn't know you were doing that, but you were doing that, and they were watching you and you were watching them, and they were turning on the same circuits in their brain that you were turning on, just so they could model the behavior. So then you can't say to the kid, stop being an emotional basket case, because they're not listening to anything you're saying. They're observing behavior. They're modeling. So when a lioness takes her cubs out to hunt, they sit and they watch her. And when they're watching her, she's priming their brain. They're actually going to emulate her behavior. So as they start observing her, they start turning on the same circuits they will when they hunt. So they start imprinting it, right? So then with children then, I call it the fast path to enlightenment, because if you want to raise a great kid, you got to be the example. Yeah. And so, you know, there's certain principles with children in certain critical periods. You don't tell your kids when they're 4 years old, you create your reality, fix this, you know, they're not ready for that. But there are certain things at certain periods of time that are really healthy. And teaching children how to shorten the refractory period of their emotional reactions is so important. And simple things like a trampoline is a great way when a kid is upset. Just
change their state.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
And they jump, and you jump with them. 10 minutes later, it's gone.
Isn't that true?
And so then you're teaching them that kind of emotional intelligence.
Gotcha.
Parents need to know that it's so important to understand to never rationalize with your kid when they're emotional. Why? Because do you want to hear anything when you're emotional, or do you want to be left alone? Because no new information can enter their nervous system that is not equal to the emotion that they're experiencing. Wow. It's not relevant. Wow. So then getting them past their emotional state and teaching them how to shorten their refractory period, and then timing. Okay. When they start getting ready for bed, and it's getting loving and it's getting quiet and they're settling down, get in bed with them and you lay there and you say, you know, I had a tough day today. I've been working on my frustration, you know, and I didn't do very well today. I got angry at a few points, I got frustrated, and I stayed that way for like 3 hours. And you just open the door for kids, and they'll say, yeah, you know, I was playing today. And they'll automatically say that, and I got so frustrated with my friend Paris, you know. And I'll say, well, that's all right, you know, that's normal, we all do that. But what I care about the most is that if you had another opportunity tomorrow in the same situation, how would you do it better? Oh my God. And then they'll say, well, I would do this. And then you say, really, if you do that, this is probably going to happen. So let's work on this together. Overcoming the old self allows us to become somebody else. And there is that period of transition. Yeah. I call it the void, where there's just not a lot happening. And you just got to be able to keep going and continuously get to the end of your belief, where most people stop. I just had a fabulous conversation with someone this weekend, broke through to the other side, and now there's so much magic happening around this person, but she's worthy now to receive it. And that is the key, because the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving. So we got to become initiated into this and understand it. Thousands of years of programming that says that we have to change things matter to matter, you know, in three-dimensional reality. And it will take time, but to begin to connect to that resource called the quantum field and create from the field instead of from matter, there's a lot of unlearning that has to go on. I think this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And if you rewind the tape 10 years ago, you know, information was the thing that stimulated thought, stimulated new ideas. And as we learn new things, we make new connections in our brains. So as we begin to add new stitches into that three-dimensional tapestry in our mind, we're beginning to cause our mind to function in new ways. But the key then is to apply it, to personalize it, to do something with it. And 10 years ago, when I got in front of an audience and talked about the application, nobody wanted to step outside that philosophical, theoretical, intellectual realm, right? Because doing something means you're going to have to change something about yourself.
Painful.
Yeah, you're going to get uncomfortable, right? And I think we're in an age of information. And in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. And because of technology, we have access to so much content. And information creates awareness. And awareness is consciousness. And you can't have consciousness without energy. They work together. So there's an energetic change, I think, that's taking place in the world right now, where people are so informed that old models, old paradigms are beginning to break down, whether it's the medical model or the religious model, the education model, journalism, the economy, you know, politics. It's all beginning to come to the surface because something else has to come out. And I think that one of the things that people are realizing is that you don't have to be a Buddhist monk to do this, or a nun with 40 years of devotion. You just got to understand the formula. And just like any skill or anything you learn, you got to go from thinking to doing to being. You got to take knowledge, you create the experience, and if you keep doing it over and over again, you start getting a skill, or you start getting wise about how to do it. And you know that you know how to do it. If we teach a person then how to trade that frustration or that hatred for an elevated emotion, and they'll say, yeah, but you know, it was my ex's fault, or I got betrayed by my partner in business. Yeah, we know that. Okay, so let's take your partner in business, or take your ex. Let's duct tape them, put them in a cannon, and shoot them to the moon. Now what are you going to do? Sooner or later, you got to reckon with yourself and change, right? So then, teach a person then how to trade that emotion for an elevated emotion. Now,
trade the emotion for an elevated emotion.
Right. So you're going to give that up, and you're going to practice feeling gratitude, as an example.
Yes.
And the person says, well, I can't feel gratitude. And I say, absolutely you can, because you don't practice feeling it. You practice spending most of your time feeling hatred and frustration. So now it's going to take a little time to cause that heart of you to bloom, or your heart of yours to bloom. Once they're able to feel even the smallest measure of gratitude, where they start feeling appreciation, thankfulness. Gratitude, it's emotional signature. When you get something, when you're receiving something, when something has happened to you, or when something is happening to you, you say thank you because you're receiving something. So the emotional signature of gratitude means the event has already happened, or it's happening to you. So the moment you open your heart and you feel gratitude, well, that emotion then is telling the body that the experience has already occurred. And the thought then can make it into the body because it's consistent with the thought. So now you're beginning to program the autonomic nervous system into a very specific destiny. You got to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, independent of the conditions in your outer environment, independent of your body's cravings of those emotions and habituations, and independent from time. And if you can, get ready. Because something weird or unusual, some synchronicity, some coincidence, some opportunity is going to land in your lap. And you didn't have to go and get it. Yes. It came to you. Now you're the vortex of creation. So if you say to me, well, I was feeling gratitude, but then there was traffic, or my coworker sent me a nasty email, then I would say, oh my God, You mean you're allowing your environment, your outer environment, to control how you feel and think? You're back to the unconscious program that you're the victim to your life.
You got it.
But when you start producing those outcomes in your life, you're going to pay attention to what you did inside of you, and you're going to believe more that you're the creator of your life and less of the victim of your life. We define reality with our senses, and I think that is one of the biggest illusions. So the fundamental question is, can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain has literally changed to look like the event has already occurred? Now, the latest research in plasticity says that's absolutely possible. And can you select a new possibility in the quantum field and begin to emotionally embrace that future every single day to such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, the objective mind, does not know the difference between the experience in your life that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're fabricating by thought alone, to the degree that you begin to signal new genes in new ways to change your body to look like the experience has already happened. Now, the latest research in epigenetics says it's absolutely possible. Now, think about this. Every day, installing the circuitry, every day conditioning the body into the emotion of the future, that your body begins to change to look like it's already happened. Now, this is where it gets fun, because now you no longer have to go anywhere to get it. Now it begins to come to you. You become the vortex or the magnet to your destiny. So then people who come out of their meditation and they say, well, I just focused on my wealth, why isn't it there? Well, you're not that good. If you're asking why isn't it there, you're back to the old person again. Stay in that state for an extended period of time as an experiment, as the scientist in your life, to keep your energy connected to the dream of your future. And then see what kind of effects begin to take place without moving into impatience, without moving into frustration, without starting to analyze why it hasn't happened or when. That is the trap of defining reality with your senses. So you have the thought of your future and you don't see it, then you experience separation. But people who are practicing this work, they have the thought of their future and they feel the emotion of their future. They're still connected to it, right? So that takes practice. And it's just learning, like hitting a golf ball, hitting a tennis ball, dancing the salsa, crocheting, whatever it is. You gotta start out staying real conscious and learning. And then you get good at it and it gets to be instrumental. It gets to be fun. And that's what I want for everybody, that the act of creation should be a blissful, playful, ecstatic, loose, free process. And so I love the idea of people taking time out of their lives to prove to themselves that if they're defined by the vision of the future, then they're not living by the memories of the past. And that's where the unknown exists. So many people, the unknown is a scary place. So they don't see that future because they're used to seeing that future with evidence, with their senses. And you have to be able to get beyond that and stay in the unknown, stay in that discomfort, and then in that moment to begin to self-regulate. Like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little anxiety. Ooh, I'm starting to feel a little frustration. That's the defining moment where your body's going back to the past, because emotions are a record of the past. Or you go into routine again. So you catch yourself. It's a victory. And if you keep catching yourself, those victories add up. And it's not so much about your wealth or your health or your freedom or your new relationship. It's actually about who you become. We have research to show that 60 days of meditation, 5 days a week, will lengthen your life. The telomeres, the little shoestrings on the end of your DNA, get longer. That means your biological age is changing. So we have the evidence now to show people what's possible. We have brain scans that are so outside of normal that when neuroscientists see them, they're blown away, because the amount of energy that's in the brain during this transcendental moment is hundreds of times outside of normal.
Wow.
I mean, you can't make your brain do that. Something is happening to you, and that person's having a transcendental moment. And we now know that we can predict it, and we now know that we can induce it. I think, everything starts with a thought. I mean, everything that you do in your life, you have to have a thought before you initiate an action, right? So So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, like any great leader in history understands that, the first thing you have to do is you have to decide, are you going to be defined by a vision of the future, or are you going to live by the memories of the past? So I'll give you an example. Most people wake up in the morning and your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment, right? It's a memory bank. So most people wake up in the morning and they start thinking about their problems, and those problems are connected to certain people and things at certain times and places. And the moment they start turning on those circuits, those memories are actually causing them to think in the past. Every single one of those memories has an emotion associated with them, and emotions are the end product of past experiences. So then the moment they recall the event, or they recall some problem in their life, they start feeling unhappy, they start feeling discouraged, they start feeling anxious. Now, thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body, and how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So we could say then, most people's entire state of being when they start their day is in the familiar past. Well, if you live in the familiar past, then it makes sense you're going to create the predictable future. So what happens for most people is they get stuck in their biology. So think about this. Your body is your unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between an experience in your life that creates an emotion and an emotion that you can create by thought alone. So if you're living by the same emotion every single day, and those emotions are influencing your thoughts, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, you're thinking in the past. Your lens of the future is going to be colored by the past, so you can't see possibilities. So most people like to wait for crisis or disease or diagnosis before they wake up enough to see. Well, the challenge is that biology tends to be redundant. So if you keep thinking the same thoughts, and those thoughts begin to fire certain circuits in your brain, the nerve cells that fire together wire together, so all of a sudden you start getting hardwired, and those are the thoughts that you can think the easiest. At the same time, those thoughts produce chemicals called emotions, and the next thing you know, your body gets accustomed to living by the same emotions, and it could be guilt, it could be unhappiness, it could be pain, but at least it's familiar to you, at least you can predict it. So some people would rather cling to the familiar than take a chance in possibility. So for most people then, they say, well, I don't really see how my thoughts have anything to do with my destiny. Well, that's because 95% of those thoughts are subconscious programs, right? So you're not even conscious that you think those thoughts. So the first step to change is starting to think about what you've been thinking about and change it. And then when you begin to observe those thoughts, you're no longer the program, you're the consciousness observing
Just
the program.
simply by being an observer of your thoughts.
Right. So most people, though, when you do that, when you decide to really take a look, it's like lighting a match in a dark place. So you feel uncomfortable. So it's easier to turn on your TV, it's easier to play with your cell phone, to distract yourself from those feelings. Well, when you understand that change really requires becoming uncomfortable to a certain degree, and that's normal, that you're leaving the known and you're stepping into the unknown, then it begs the question, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? Because your attention on those thoughts begins to reorganize circuitry, remold the brain. When you're feeling gratitude and your heart is open, you're broadcasting energy into the field. Now,
frequency.
A frequency. You lay the intent of the thought of your health or your wealth. That frequency can carry the thought of your wealth. It can carry the thought of your health. If you're suffering, suffering does not carry, that energy does not carry the thought of your wealth. It carries a different set of thoughts. So then we're teaching people how to self-regulate, because if you're going to believe in that future that you're imagining with all of your heart, it better be open and activated.
Right.
And you better know how to self-regulate. And you have to know the moment you disconnect from the energy of your future because of some circumstance in your life and you lose that feeling, if you're practicing it on a daily basis with your eyes closed, then the next level is to be able to open your eyes and do it right in the moment and be able to self-regulate and change the frustration from some experience in your life back to the energy of your future. Now, that requires great awareness and great effort. But if you have a community of people that are practicing this on a daily basis, and they're connected to their future because that's where their mind is, they begin to want the future more than the emotions of the past. So we've done enough measurements now, Louis, to know that we can teach people how to do that, and we have evidence that people can sustain it for 45 minutes to an hour. It's a skill now. They know that they know how to do it. So now they have brain coherence and heart coherence. Well, once the heart begins to become orderly and coherent, it acts as an amplifier and it drives energy to the brain. So now the brain is getting more energy once the heart is open, and then you're thinking a different set of thoughts. And those thoughts produce different chemicals for you to feel more of that. And here comes nitric oxide from oxytocin, and then all of a sudden your heart literally starts to swell. It literally begins to open up, and there's more energy going there, and now you're coming from a different level of mind. You have to really begin to mentally rehearse. Like, so you ask yourself at the end of your day, I do this every day. How'd I do? How'd I do today, bro? How'd you do? Did you do good? Where'd you fall from grace? What was it that caused you to go unconscious for the rest of the day? Like, what was that moment? Now, if you're a student of life, you'll begin to contemplate, well, it was that person that said that thing, then I reacted, or I got this email, or things didn't go my way, and I started feeling angry or frustrated or fearful. The next time that happens, how could I evolve my experience? Now, you may have to search for some answers of the best model to build, or you may actually have a long contemplation and start to go, God, the next time that happens, I think I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to plan my behaviors. And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing what you're going to do begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like you already did it. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep installing that hardware, the hardware will become a software program, which means you'll just start acting like a happy person. Why? There's no magic there. You installed the circuitry. So that's more important than the news.
Right.
It's more important than answering any email or any text. It's more important than talking about your past or some dinner. If you can begin to just think about how you're going to do it differently, that's the building process neurologically already. So now you have to get conscious in order to do that. And it takes some time. That means you got to shut your cell phone off. You got to close your door. You got to take a break from everything out there and begin to practice. And so by experience, then you start noticing, oh, here it comes. Here comes the frustration, or here comes the fear. And now we've given people the tools to be able to self-regulate, to create brain and heart coherence. And so you see people say, excuse me 1 minute, I just need a minute. It takes some breaths, they get back in, they connect to the energy of their future. This is incidental compared to where they're going. So they don't fall from grace. They don't allow their energy to drop. And so, in the beginning, it takes a lot, because it takes a lot of energy and awareness to stay conscious and not go unconscious. But if you're persistent and you're determined and you're sincere, you begin to figure it out. You begin to say, I am not going to give my power away to that person or that circumstance when I can use it to heal or to create a new future. And so people then won't excuse themselves and say, I had a hard day yesterday, I had a fight with my coworker or my ex, and I don't feel like doing the work. Well, that's the time to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
Because it's all of those times that we self-correct. Those are the most valuable moments to us. People who've had profoundly transcendental experiences where we say, got lit up, they connected, and their brain goes into very, very high coherent states and super gamma patterns that are way outside of normal, and they have a transcendental download or connection that's mystical. They look back at their entire life. They don't want to change one thing in their past because it got them to that moment. That's the moment the past no longer exists. Now, by the same means, they look back at their past and they see all those tough moments where they overcame themselves and they fall in love with that person. They don't look at the good meditations or the things that went well. They know that it was those moments that got them to this moment. And I think then that's when they begin to understand that all of the hard work all the effort in who we become makes, no one can take that away from us. So then once we arrive at that level and we experience whatever the dream is or whatever we create, then the next thing is do it until you fully enjoy it. And then when it gets boring or predictable, let's go again. Let's do something else. Our research shows that when you get a community of people together and they begin to open their hearts and they have the intent for the greatest good for people that they know or people that they could focus on, that our research shows that you can actually affect another person's autonomic nervous system when you move into heart coherence in a very non-local way. Well, what's the significance of that? Well, we have an amazing community. And our community is connected by these elevated emotions. Those other emotions of survival create separation. But we work to open our hearts and to feel connected. We can begin to affect people in a very non-local way. In other words, everybody else's hearts go into coherence at the exact same time. You, by opening your heart, strengthen your connection to this community. You strengthen the connection to the people that you relate with in your lives. The majority of our thoughts and feelings are connected to our sexuality, to our victimization, our guilt, our suffering, our shame, our unworthiness, our self-doubt, or our importance, our control, our fear, our anger, our frustration, our hatred, our judgment. Those are the first three hormonal centers in the body. And those first three centers have everything to do with survival. And those centers are energy consumers. Orgasm, digestion, stress is a lot of energy that we're drawing from our very vital life force, our resource of light and information, and we're turning it into chemistry, and we're literally robbing the body's energy, right? So then living like that for the short term is okay because the body can move back to homeostasis, it can restore itself, but when we're overdoing that consistently, then there's no energy for growth and repair because you're living constantly in survival. So again, you can eat all the right food, you can do all the right things, but if you're living in anxiety and fear and you're viewing your world from the worst case scenario that could possibly happen, because that's what you do in survival, there's no energy for growth and repair. There's no energy for healing. So the majority of our thoughts are signaling certain circuits in the brain that signal another part of the brain, the limbic brain, to make what's called a neuropeptide. Neuropeptides are chemical messengers that signal hormonal centers. So now you're taking thought and you're storing it as energy in these energy centers. And if you're living in survival, why would you open your heart? I mean, it's just not a time to open your heart. I mean, if you're getting chased by T-Rex, it's not a time to meditate. It's not a time to learn. It's not a time to connect. It's not a time to communicate. It's not a time to sit down and go within. It's not a time to be vulnerable. It's time to run, fight, or hide. And so,
is that why we're this way? I've never asked you this before. Is this some? I don't think you believe this, but I just want to understand. Is this some sort of genetic disposition that's been passed down to us since we've been chased by T-Rex?
I think so. I think survival has been very adaptive. Like, because if you're being chased by T-Rex, you don't run up to T-Rex and say, "Oh, cute little dinosaur, let me pet you." That's not adaptive. The fear is adaptive. You run from the unknown. You run from challenges, right? So if you're living in survival, there's better chances of surviving if you run from the unknown. And by the way, when you're living in survival, the infinite potentials in the quantum field, you'll select the worst case scenario in your mind. And you'll begin to emotionally prepare yourself for the worst case scenario because you have better chances of surviving.
There you go.
If you prepare for the worst, right?
There you
so
go.
people spend their whole life thinking about the worst thing and emotionally embracing it. Well, you take a thought and emotion or an image and an emotion, you're branding or conditioning your body into what? Anxiety, into fear. So then you keep doing that over and over again, the body becomes the mind of fear. And whether you think you can control it or not, you're going to have a panic attack. And the panic attack is the body saying, you've conditioned me this way. Try as you may with your conscious mind to control it. You programmed it subconsciously. Then you start worrying about the next panic attack, and it's that very anticipation that keeps the person on the hamster wheel,
and robs them of all of this energy as well.
They're absolutely. So they don't believe in possibility when they're living in that state, because in survival, it's not a time to create. All the blood flow is going to the hindbrain and away from the forebrain. There's no physiology really for a person to begin to create a new future. So think about it. So then 70% of the time, people in the world are living anticipating the next moment based on their past moment. And so they're laying reality down moment by moment with the next known, the next predictable moment. And so the hormones of stress endorse the senses. Our senses become heightened when we're under stress, and we become materialists. We narrow our focus on the danger.
Yes.
So then you're focusing on matter, you're focusing on the material world, and when you do that, you put all your attention, the arousal of the stress hormones puts all your attention on your body. If you're being chased by T-Rex, you better be paying attention to your body. If you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, that your thoughts create your life, let's examine the thoughts that you think. Now, you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. Out of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts that you think in one day, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. So the same thoughts will always lead to the same choices. The same choices will always lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors will always create the same experiences, and the same experiences always produce the same emotions. And those same emotions then drive our very same thoughts. And our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry, our neurohormones, and even our genetic expression stays exactly equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Now, how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. So then if you believe just the slightest bit in this idea that your personality creates your personal reality, and you wanted to change your personal reality, that means you'd have to begin to change your personality by thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. To begin to become conscious of your unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. And then look at the emotions that keep you connected to past experiences and decide if those emotions belong in your future. You see, most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become someone else. So reason this with me. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through frequent repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times that your body knows how to do it as well as your mind. So if you're thinking the same thoughts 90% of the time as the day before, you're demonstrating the same behaviors 90% of the time, and you're embracing the same emotions as the day before 90% of the time, over time, you begin to fire the same circuits in your brain in the same sequences, in the same patterns, in the same combinations. Now, there's a principle in neuroscience that says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. So as you think the same thoughts that lead to the same choices, that of course produce the same behaviors that lead to the same experiences, that ultimately produce the same emotions, that in time you begin to hardwire your brain into the same finite pattern. Now that box in your brain, there's no literal box in your brain, but that finite signature ultimately becomes your identity. So then most people, by the time they're 35 years old, become a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a subconscious computer program. 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a memorized state of being in which you've done something so many times that your body now is doing it better than your brain. Every time you learn something new, you add a new stitch to the three-dimensional tapestry of your gray matter. And if you begin to think about what you learned, you're causing your brain to fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind, because mind is the brain in action. So we could say then that new thoughts should lead to new choices, and new choices should lead to new behaviors, and new behaviors should create new experiences, and new experiences then should create new emotions, and those new emotions should inspire new thoughts,
And that's called evolution.
Person's doing the vision board and they're saying, when I get my new car, I get my new house, I get my new relationship, then I'm going to feel so great. Well, then they're back to the program, waiting for it to happen for them to feel the emotion. They're believing their outer world has to change in order for them to feel better. There's no effect of drawing the experience to you with that way. So the person has to use those tools to get them into the emotional state for them to feel like it's already happened. Now think about this. If you get up from a creative process and you feel grateful, you feel a love for life, you feel a joy for existence, you feel a passion for the moment, you will not be looking for your future because you'll feel like it's already happened. It's the moment that we start feeling those self-limiting emotions that we feel separation, and then we start looking for it again. Well, then if you're waiting, you're not creating, you're in separation again. So then whatever it takes for you to move into a state of being. And what is a state of being? Thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain. Feelings are the vocabulary of your body. How you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So then if you wake up in the morning and you come back to your senses with a clean slate and you say, I don't feel anything, and you say, well, let me start thinking about all the problems in my life. Well, all those problems are connected to different people or different objects or things at different times and places. The moment you remember your problems, a memory is a record of the past. You're thinking in the past. Every one of those problems has an emotion associated with them. So all of a sudden you start feeling unhappy, you start feeling bitter, you start feeling frustrated. So now your body's in the past. So then most people then create a state of being that's connected to their past. And if they're in the familiar past, then they are going to crave the predictable future and they're going to fall back into routine. So then we want people then to get very clear on that vision of their future, however they do it, and begin to combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion. And the stronger the emotion they feel from the vision they're creating, the more altered they feel inside of them, the more they're going to pay attention to the pictures in their mind. And now they're remembering their future. And biologically, it's exactly the same as remembering your past. In fact, if you're not being defined by a vision in the future, it means you're making your past more real than your future. You're falling in love with your past. You're more in love with your past than you are with your future. That you're believing in your past more than you're believing in your future. When you get to that moment where you have that feeling, that's your compass, because that feeling is going to drive your behaviors. It's going to drive more of those thoughts. And when you feel that feeling and it's visceral, no person, no thing, no experience will stand in the way between you and that vision. And you will be initiated by the universe into wealth. You will be initiated into health. You'll be initiated into freedom. Those people, all those people that have healed themselves of all those different health conditions, they are so humble and so happy, and they feel so great that they would never trade this feeling because of what you thought of them. They've left that program behind a long time ago. They actually don't care how you think of them. They actually are so happy with themselves that they're no longer dependent on anything outside of them. Now, I think that's a really important moment, because that's the moment we give people permission in our lives to do the same, right? And I think that more and more people are beginning to figure that out. One of the things about the global pandemic that I said to my staff and to my family the moment I heard how the circumstances in the world changed, I just said I refuse to be a victim to these circumstances. So a victim consciousness is when we allow something in our outer environment to control the way we feel and think. So if I say to you, Jay, why are you so upset today? And you said, oh, it's because of this person or circumstance. What you're really saying is something in my outer environment, some person or some condition is controlling the way I think and feel. Now, that's not the truth. That's just a response, right? So anything that controls our thoughts and feelings causes us to be victim to those things. And the stronger the emotion we feel to some circumstance in our life, the more we pay attention to it. And where we place our attention is where we place our energy. So we're giving our life force, we're giving our power away to that circumstance. And so I just made up my mind that it was a great opportunity to get into the cocoon. We've done an experiment, just 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day with 120 people, trading resentment, frustration, fear for gratitude, appreciation, and thankfulness. Measuring their immune response, the chemical immunoglobulin A, your primary defense against bacteria and viruses, the best flu shot you'll ever get, lives innately within you. Turns out when you're frustrated, when you're impatient, when you're fearful, the immune system dials down because you're in emergency. It's all your energy is going for some threat in your outer world. There's no energy in your inner world for growth and repair. But how do you turn that around? So then, as people begin to open their heart, can that chemical begin to elevate? 4 days, 50% change in the 120 people. Their IgA levels went up 50% in 4 days. Wow. That's your body's immune system is now upregulating genes that are making proteins and immunoglobulins and antibodies that you don't need a flu shot. In other words, your inner state is greater than your outer world. So then, just by doing that, we now know that your immune system is going to get stronger. By the same means, take 120 people or 50 people and measure 7,500 gene regulations. Okay? In 4 days, 2 genes that suppress cancer growth and tumors are activated and upregulated. The genes that stimulate stem cells to go to damaged tissues and repair them, upregulated. The gene for oxidative balance is upregulated. Anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. Just your body's naturally doing this. The gene for neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in response to novel experiences and learning. This is 4 days. The gene switches on. The gene for more balance in the pituitary and the pancreas. The gene for the microtubules of the cells, the little fibers that respond to energy and frequency. So in 4 days, we now know that you can change your genetic destiny if you just practice the inner work.
If you want more top 10 videos, they're not on this channel anymore. I have a dedicated channel just for it. Go check it out. The link is right there next to me. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.